The wind had a bite that morning in Chicago, one of those early March days where winter refused to let go. The sky hung low and gray, and the streets of South Side were still slick from last night's freezing rain. The city moved slower in that kind of cold. People hunched deeper into their coats, avoided eye contact, and prayed their buses weren't late. Inside a two-bedroom apartment on the fourth floor of a worn-down building, Janelle Thompson pulled on her uniform pants and tied her apron around her waist in front of the mirror. The lights flickered slightly overhead. She ignored it, just another thing to fix when the rent wasn't 4 days overdue. Her son, Micah, lay curled on the couch under a fleece blanket, still fast asleep. He'd outgrown his toddler bed months ago, but the couch was the only spot that didn't leak when the roof cried. Janelle knelt beside him, brushing a hand across his forehead. "I'll be back before you're out of school," she whispered. "Be good for Auntie C." She kissed his cheek, grabbed her coat, and stepped outside just as her sister pulled up in a dented Nissan with the back window covered in plastic wrap. "Running late?" Charlene asked, popping the passenger door open for Micah. "When am I not?" Janelle replied with a half-smile. The sisters exchanged a quick glance, wordless but full of understanding. C took Micah, and Janelle took the 35-minute walk to Gracie's Diner, her workplace for the last 2.5 years. She'd applied on a whim after her mother passed. At the time, she was drowning in grief and bills, too lost to return to her college classes, too broke to keep trying. The dream of becoming a teacher had faded like an old photograph, something she looked at occasionally but no longer believed belonged to her. Gracie's was a staple of the neighborhood: red booths, chrome stools, a menu that hadn't changed in a decade. Locals loved it. Tourists passed it by. Lately, though, with the neighborhood shifting, fancier apartments, trendy cafes creeping in, the diner had started seeing new faces. Faces that didn't quite fit but came anyway, sometimes for nostalgia, sometimes for the experience. At 6:05 a.m., Janelle pushed through the door of the diner, letting in a gust of cold. The smell of bacon grease and fresh coffee wrapped around her like a familiar blanket. She clocked in, tied her curly hair into a tight bun, and joined the small team already working the morning rush. "Morning, Janelle," said Rita, the head cook, handing her the first slip of tickets. "Looks like it's going to be a full one." "When isn't it?" Janelle said, tying on her apron. She moved from table to table like a quiet rhythm, refilling mugs, taking orders, swapping quick jokes with regulars. She didn't smile too much, not because she wasn't kind, but because life had trained her to be efficient, not cheerful. At 7:10, the bell above the door chimed again. She didn't look up until the smell of expensive cologne replaced the usual diner scents. He walked in like he owned the place, though it was clear he didn't belong. Tall, early 40s, expensive wool coat, slicked back blonde hair. His shoes probably cost more than her paycheck. Behind him trailed an assistant in a black pencil skirt, tapping on a phone and barely making eye contact with anyone. He took a seat in booth 3 and immediately drummed his fingers on the table. Janelle approached with her notepad. "Good morning," she said evenly. "Can I start you off with coffee?" He didn't answer, just glanced at her name tag. Then he nodded. "One black. No sugar." "Hot," he said. She walked back to the counter and poured from the freshest pot, careful to keep it from spilling. She brought it over, placed it gently in front of him, and turned to take his food order. But he'd already taken a sip. His face twisted. "Jesus," he muttered. Then louder, "Is this what you call coffee?" Janelle blinked. "It's fresh, sir. I can get you another if you'd prefer." "Fresh? Lady, it tastes like someone boiled yesterday's dishwater and served it to me." She held her ground, hands steady. "We brew a new pot every hour. But I can replace it for you, no problem." The assistant didn't look up. The man leaned back in the booth, shaking his head. "What I'd like," he said, "is someone competent enough to do their job right the first time." Across the diner, a few heads turned. A man in a Cubs hoodie paused mid-bite. Rita peeked from behind the counter. Janelle didn't flinch. She had been called worse, in worse places, by people far more dangerous than a man in a $3,000 suit. "I'll bring you a new cup," she said simply. "No," he snapped. "You know what I want. I want to know why this place hires people like you." Silence fell like a blanket. Janelle's fingers tightened around her notepad, but her expression remained still. "You people," he continued, "always act like you're owed something. Like wearing that apron makes you respectable." Behind her, A spoon clattered to the floor. A regular, an old black man named Mr. Darius, slowly pushed his cup aside and started to rise. Janelle raised a hand behind her, without turning. "I'm fine," she said softly. She looked back at the man. "I'm going to ask you to lower your voice, sir. Other guests are trying to enjoy their breakfast." He gave a humorless laugh. "Or what? You'll spit in my food? Call your manager? I own businesses. I own people like you." Something shifted in her chest, something old, like an ache she'd kept buried. Her hands were still, her jaw tight. "You don't own me," she said. He smiled smugly. "Sure about that?" She didn't think. Her body moved before her brain could catch up. One step back. Pivot. Her right leg came up. The heel of her black sneaker connected with his chin. There was a thud, then silence. He crumpled into the booth, stunned, blinking up at the ceiling. His assistant finally looked up, jaw slack. Janelle stood over him, chest heaving, eyes sharp. The diner was frozen. The sound of a coffee cup being set down felt deafening. Her voice didn't waver. "You don't own anyone. Not anymore." For a moment, the entire diner was silent. Not the kind of silence that follows a joke no one laughs at, but the kind that creeps into a room when something undeniable has happened. Something irreversible. Trent Radcliffe, now half-sprawled in booth 3 with a stream of blood trickling from the corner of his mouth, blinked in disbelief. The man who walked into the diner like he owned the place had just been laid out by a waitress. By that waitress. A black woman in scuffed sneakers and a grease-stained apron. He slowly sat up, holding his jaw, and scanned the room, expecting someone, anyone, to come to his aid. His assistant, still glued to her phone, stood frozen. The customers in the diner stared, some wide-eyed, some trying to pretend they weren't watching. But no one moved to help him. No one spoke. It was Mr. Darius who moved first, rising from his corner booth and walking over to Janelle's side. He didn't say a word, just stood there, close enough to make his presence known, but not interfering. It was an act of quiet solidarity. Trent's voice cracked as he rose fully to his feet. "You're finished. You hear me?" he barked, pointing a trembling hand at Janelle. "Do you know who I am?" Janelle didn't answer. "I'm Trent Radcliffe. I built a $100 million company from scratch. I sit on 3 corporate boards. I've dined with senators. You think you can assault someone like me and walk away from it?" "I didn't assault you," Janelle said calmly, though her hands were shaking. "I stopped you from doing it to me." With words. He staggered toward the counter. "Give me the owner of this place. Now. I want this woman fired. Arrested. Sued. I'll own this damn diner by the end of the week." From behind the counter, Rita leaned over the register, arms crossed. "Owner's not in yet," she said flatly. "But I'm the shift lead. You can speak with me." "You? Great. Another amateur." He turned to his assistant. "Sasha, call legal. And the police." The assistant finally moved. "Sir, maybe we should go? There are people filming." Trent spun toward the diner. 3 phones were already raised. A teenager near the front had caught everything. His voice, the insults, and the kick. The red recording light blinked steadily as Trent realized what was happening. "You're recording me," he growled. "Delete that. That's illegal." The teen didn't even blink. Janelle stepped back, her body finally registering what had happened. Her heart pounded in her ears. She hadn't planned to hit him. She hadn't even realized she could. But now, in the wake of it, all she could feel was the sheer, electric weight of having done something no one expected her to do. Rita approached slowly. "Janelle, you okay?" "I think so," she said, her voice low. He kept pushing." "You don't need to explain," Rita said, her tone fierce. "I saw the whole thing." Across the diner, the mood shifted. Customers started murmuring. A woman in a business suit looked directly at Trent. "You were out of line," she said. "And loud. She asked you politely. We all heard it." Another voice chimed in from the back. "Dude, she warned you." You kept going. Trent shook his head like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "This is a lawsuit waiting to happen. All of you, you're witnesses. She assaulted me." "No," Mr. Darius said, his voice low and deliberate. "You insulted her. You tried to humiliate her. You just didn't expect her to have enough spine to stand up." Trent turned back toward Janelle. "You won't be serving coffee after this. Hell, you won't even get a job cleaning toilets. I will ruin you." Janelle didn't speak. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady. Behind her calm was something else. Fear, yes, but also a kind of defiance that had been waiting far too long to rise. Then, as if to punctuate the moment, the bell above the door jingled again. A pair of uniformed police officers stepped into the diner. Trent lit up. "Officers, over here. I want to file an assault charge." "She kicked me." Witnesses saw it. The lead officer, a black woman in her 40s, walked toward him slowly. "We got a call," she said. "Multiple, actually. About a disturbance. We'll need to speak to both parties. I want her arrested." "Sir, we'll assess the situation," the officer said. "Ma'am, are you the one involved?" she asked Janelle. "Yes. Can you step outside with us?" Janelle hesitated. Rita stepped in. "Can I come with her? As her manager?" "No, ma'am," the officer replied gently. "Just her for now." Janelle glanced around. The entire diner watched her, faces tense, waiting. She untied her apron, handed it to Rita, and walked out the front door with the officers. Outside, the wind hit her hard. Cold, unforgiving. The squad car lights blinked against the gray morning. As she reached the sidewalk, she saw a man in a suit step out of a black SUV parked nearby. He spoke into a phone, but paused to glance her way. Then the cuffs came out. "You're placing me under arrest?" she asked, her voice thin. "It's standard," the officer said. "We'll sort it out at the precinct. You have the right to remain silent." The words blurred after that. Janelle felt the cold steel tighten around her wrists, the air rush out of her chest. She thought about Micah, about her rent, about the whispering mouths of those who'd say she should have kept her head down. And above all, she wondered if doing the right thing had just ended everything. The walls of the precinct room were off-white, not in a clean way, but in that dull, institutional way that made time stretch. Janelle sat on a metal chair, hands no longer cuffed but still feeling the memory of steel around her wrists. Her coat hung on a rack in the corner, damp from the wind outside. She'd been processed, fingerprinted, then left to wait. No one told her what would happen next. It had been 2 hours. The officer who brought her in, a woman with a tired voice and kind eyes, had said it was just protocol, that someone had to be brought in when an altercation got physical, that there were witnesses on both sides, that everything would be reviewed. But to Janelle, it didn't feel like protocol. It felt like punishment. For speaking. For not just taking it. For not sitting there and smiling while being slowly erased. Her phone had been taken during processing. She couldn't check on Micah. Couldn't call her sister. Couldn't remind anyone that she was human and needed help. She stared at her hands. The same hands that poured coffee, cleaned tables, held her son at night. The same hands that had risen, in defense, and delivered one perfect kick to a man who believed people like her still owed him obedience. Her mind played it over and over. The kick, the gasp from the crowd, the blood on his lip, the silence that followed. She didn't regret it. Not really. What she regretted was how long it had taken for her to stand up for herself. The door opened, and a detective stepped in. Mid-50s, white, with a face that had seen too many years and too many stories. He carried a tablet in his hand and sat across from her without looking up. "Janelle Thompson," he said, tapping at the screen. Age 29. No criminal record. Single mother. Employee at Gracie's Diner. Been there 2.5 years. "Sound right?" "Yes," she answered. He nodded but didn't look at her. "This morning, you kicked a man in the face. Public place. Multiple witnesses. He verbally assaulted me," Janelle said. "He degraded me. Threatened me. Said he owned people like me." "That's not in the police report," the detective said flatly. "It's on video." He paused, finally looking up. "That's what I wanted to talk to you about." He turned the tablet around and hit play. A video started, shaky at first, clearly taken from a phone. But the audio was clear. Crystal. Trent's voice filled the room. "You people always act like you're owed something. You think that apron makes you respectable? I own people like you." And then, the kick. The detective didn't react. He just hit pause and turned the screen back around. "That video has been shared over 6 million times in the last 3 hours, he said. "It's on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. News outlets are already running it. The mayor's office has been contacted." Janelle blinked. 6 million. More, probably by now. The internet moves fast. She didn't know what to say. Part of her had expected obscurity. A small article. Maybe a local backlash. Not this. "The public response is divided," the detective continued. "Some say you're a hero. Others say you assaulted a man and should be charged. His lawyers are already pushing for battery. Of course they are. He looked at her again, this time softer. We're not charging you. Not yet. But you're not going home just yet either. The department's under pressure. We're waiting on a statement from the state's attorney. Janelle leaned back, suddenly exhausted. So I wait. Yes. She exhaled slowly, staring at the ceiling. Somewhere in this city, her son was probably asking where she was. Her sister was probably panicking. And in 1,000 comment threads, strangers were debating whether she was dangerous or brave. That's what it meant to be black and loud in America. Loud didn't have to mean shouting. Sometimes it just meant saying no. The door opened again. This time, a woman entered, tall, professional, mid-30s, with a navy blazer and sharp features. She walked in like she didn't need permission to be there. I'm here for Miss Thompson, she said, flashing a badge. The detective raised an eyebrow. And you are? Attorney Maya Delgado. Civil Rights Unit. She's not answering another question without me present. The detective stood, nodded once, and left the room. Maya turned to Janelle and sat down, folding her hands. I'm not court-appointed, she said quickly. I volunteered. I saw the video. I have a kid too. Janelle swallowed the lump in her throat. What happens now? Well, Maya said, you've become the face of a movement you didn't ask to lead. So the question is, do you want to speak or stay silent? I didn't want any of this, Janelle said. I wanted to serve some coffee and get home to my son. I know, but the world showed up anyway. And now you've got a spotlight on you, even if you didn't flip the switch. Maya pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. There are at least 12 media outlets asking for comment. There's a protest forming outside Gracie's. A GoFundMe has raised nearly 15 grand in 3 hours for your legal defense and whatever comes next. Janelle stared at the folder like it might explode. I'm not a leader, she said quietly. You're someone who didn't stay silent. That's enough. Janelle leaned forward, elbows on the table, head in her hands. What if I lose my job? What if CPS comes after me for being arrested? What if Micah grows up thinking his mom's a criminal? Maya's voice softened. He'll grow up knowing his mother stood up when it counted. Not everyone gets to say that. Janelle didn't respond. Outside the precinct, cameras were already gathering. News vans, protesters, signs that read, "We see you, Janelle," and "Coffee and Dignity." Her name was trending in every major city. She sat in that small room, caught between fear and fury, between the life she knew and the life rushing toward her. She didn't ask to be a symbol. She wasn't even sure she wanted to be one. But something deep inside her, older than this morning, older than this diner, maybe even older than her, whispered that maybe, finally, she had said enough without saying a word. And now the world had answered back. By the time Janelle stepped out of the precinct, the city had changed. She had braced herself for cold wind, for cameras, maybe a reporter or two. But what greeted her was a wall of noise, chants, bullhorns, flashing lights, handwritten signs, the unmistakable energy of protest. The street was blocked off by metal barricades. Uniformed officers tried to keep order while journalists shouted questions. Cameras followed every move, and strangers held signs with her name in bold, uneven lettering. Justice for Janelle. We see you. Being loud is not a crime. The irony wasn't lost on her. She hadn't spoken above a calm sentence. She hadn't raised her voice. But somehow, her silence had been loud enough to echo. Maya Delgado was at her side, shielding her from the crowd, guiding her toward a waiting car. Janelle lowered her head as flashes exploded around her, reporters yelling. Janelle, do you regret what you did? Was the kick planned? What message are you sending to other workers of color? She didn't answer. Not yet. Not when the words inside her were still shaking loose from the walls they'd been locked behind for years. Once inside the car, Maya pulled the door shut, blocking out the noise. You good? She asked. Janelle took a shaky breath. What is this? This is the moment the world notices you. I didn't ask for that. No one ever does. Janelle stared out the window as they drove. Protesters waved as the car passed, some holding phones, others just watching with quiet intensity. It felt surreal. Less than 6 hours ago, she had been pouring coffee for a man who called her disposable. Now, she was on trending hashtags, in breaking news banners, on the front page of sites she didn't even follow. Maya scrolled her phone. You're not just trending nationally, she said. It's gone international. CNN wants a statement. So does the New York Times. You're a symbol now. Janelle turned to her. A symbol of what? That's up to you. The words hung there, heavy. Too heavy. They arrived at Charlene's apartment, where Micah was already napping in the back room, unaware that the world had rearranged itself around his mother. Charlene pulled Janelle into a tight hug at the door. I saw the video, she whispered. You did what half of us wish we could. I didn't mean to, Janelle said. It just happened. Charlene leaned back. It didn't just happen. It was waiting. And maybe it needed to. Inside, the news was already playing in the living room. A split screen showed Janelle's kick on the left and a live press conference on the right. Behind the podium stood Trent Radcliffe, his jaw bruised, his pride more so. He looked angry, tired, but polished, like a man who knew how to control a narrative. This morning, he began, I was the victim of an unprovoked attack while attempting to enjoy a quiet breakfast. The footage circulating online has been taken out of context and edited in ways that misrepresent what truly occurred. I am cooperating fully with law enforcement, and I trust that the legal system will handle this appropriately. Janelle scoffed. Unprovoked. Trent wasn't finished. This is a dangerous time, he continued. Social media has become a weapon for misinformation, and cancel culture threatens to dismantle the lives of hardworking Americans based on isolated incidents. I will not be silenced by online mobs. The camera panned to a group of reporters. One of them, a black woman with braids, raised her hand. Mr. Radcliffe, are you denying that you made racially charged remarks toward Ms. Thompson? I deny any claim that I acted with malice, Trent said smoothly. And I would caution against judging anyone based on 30 seconds of viral footage. Janelle turned the TV off. That man could sell fire to hell, Charlene muttered. He's protecting what matters to him, Janelle said quietly. His name. His company. Maya nodded. He's not just trying to save his image. He's trying to control the conversation. Well, he's got the microphone, Janelle said. Then maybe it's time you took it back. Janelle didn't respond. She picked up her son, kissed his forehead, and tried to remember what normal felt like. But it was gone now, replaced with something bigger, messier, louder. By the next morning, Gracie's diner was covered in media vans and protest signs. The owner, a stout woman named Margot, issued a brief statement. We stand by Janelle Thompson. Our staff deserve to work without fear of harassment or humiliation. Mr. Radcliffe is no longer welcome in our establishment. The diner became a rallying point, with people lining up not for pancakes, but to show solidarity. Meanwhile, inside the headquarters of Radcliffe Technologies, a storm was brewing. Trent's press conference had failed to sway public opinion. Shareholders were alarmed. Internal emails had leaked, one of them referencing past complaints filed against Trent by female employees, including a black intern who'd left the company under mysterious circumstances. At the heart of the storm stood Alexa Moore, the chief operating officer. She had built much of the company's ethical framework, but her influence had always been shadowed by Trent's ego and charm. Alexa was not someone who made public statements lightly, but 2 days after the incident, she called a private meeting with the board of directors. This isn't about one incident, she told them. This is about a pattern, a culture. And if we don't act now, we're complicit. The board murmured, uncertain. Step 1, Alexa said. Trent takes a leave of absence, effective immediately. Step 2, we conduct an internal audit of complaints filed in the past 5 years. Step 3, we hire someone to rebuild our culture from the ground up. And who do you have in mind? One board member asked. Alexa didn't hesitate. I want to meet with Janelle Thompson. Janelle had never thought her name would trend alongside hashtags like #DignityInAction and #JusticeForWorkers. But there it was, splashed across timelines, tickers, and headlines. She was everywhere and nowhere at once. A face on a screen, a symbol in a protest, a soundbite on the news. But behind the virality, there was something more unsettling. Noise. Endless noise. For every message of support, there was another accusing her of being violent, dangerous, unprofessional. She'd seen screenshots of conservative pundits calling her a threat to small businesses. One radio host had asked, what if every employee started kicking their customers now? The narrative was splitting in real time. Some had turned her into a hero, others into a warning. Janelle sat on the edge of her sister's couch, scrolling through the storm, feeling both numb and hyper-aware. Micah played quietly with blocks on the floor. Charlene brought over tea, lowering the volume on the television. Stop reading it all, she said softly. It'll mess with your head. I need to know what they're saying. No, you don't. You need to remember who you are. Janelle gave a weak smile, but didn't look up. Her fingers hovered over a post that had gone particularly viral. An open letter titled, "We Are All Janelle," written by a schoolteacher in Detroit. The letter described the everyday indignities that service workers of color faced, and how what Janelle did wasn't rage, it was release. Thousands of comments flooded beneath it. But it was one comment, from someone named Malik Santos, that caught her eye. If we want change, we need more than sympathy. We need structure. I want to interview her. Not for clicks. For truth. The name felt familiar. Charlene noticed the pause. Wait, is that Malik Santos, the journalist? He's got that podcast, Ground Level. Janelle nodded slowly. She'd heard a few episodes. Malik had a way of taking stories that felt local, small, almost invisible, and making them matter. He didn't shout. He listened. And he made other people listen too. The next morning, Maya arranged a call. Malik's voice came through clear, calm, steady. No urgency, no pressure. I know you've got 1,000 people in your ear, he said. I'm not here to direct your voice. I just want to make space for it. I'm not a movement, Janelle replied. You're part of one, he said. Whether you meant to be or not. They agreed to meet in person. Neutral ground. A community center on the south side that doubled as a food bank on weekends. No cameras. Just conversation. When Janelle arrived, Malik was already there, setting up a small mic on a fold-out table. He was in his early 30s, Puerto Rican, with soft eyes and the posture of someone used to holding silence. You can stop the recording anytime, he said. You can walk out anytime. This is your space. Janelle sat, took a breath, and let the world slow down for the first time in days. Malik asked the questions no one else had. What did it feel like in that moment, before the kick? Janelle paused. Like my body stopped belonging to me. He nodded. And after? Like it belonged to me again. For the next hour, she spoke, not just about the diner or Trent Radcliffe, but about everything that led up to that moment. The years of swallowing her anger, the customers who said, "You people," with a smirk, the managers who asked her to smile more, the fear of losing everything if she spoke up. I didn't kick him because I'm angry at men like him, she said. I kicked him because I was tired of pretending I wasn't angry at the world that protects men like him. Malik didn't interrupt. He let the silence carry her words farther than noise ever could. When the episode aired 2 days later, it went viral within hours, not because it was sensational, but because it was raw, honest, human. Clips flooded social media. Excerpts were printed in national papers. Celebrities quoted her words. But more importantly, everyday people shared their own stories. A barista in Atlanta posted a video talking about the time a customer told her she was too loud for such a small job. A janitor in Phoenix described how his manager called him one of the good ones. A nursing aide in Baltimore shared how she'd been asked to tone down her hair for looking unprofessional. The internet didn't just see Janelle anymore. It saw itself. But the backlash grew louder too. A viral clip on a conservative news network called her the poster child of entitlement. Politicians started referencing her incident in debates about labor laws. One senator even proposed a bill aimed at protecting businesses from aggressive employees. It was no longer just about Janelle. It was a cultural fault line, and she was standing right on top of it. At home, she tried to block it out. She focused on Micah, on making meals, on keeping her voice calm even when her insides churned. Then, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, Maya arrived with an envelope in hand. You need to see this, she said. Inside was a formal letter from Radcliffe Technologies. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a lawsuit. It was an invitation. Dear Ms. Thompson, in light of recent events and the national dialogue that has followed, we at Radcliffe Technologies would like to invite you to a private meeting with our executive leadership. We believe your perspective could be invaluable in helping us rebuild our internal culture and assess systemic issues within our company. This is not a PR stunt. It is a genuine offer. Sincerely, Alexa Moore, Chief Operating Officer. Janelle stared at the paper, her mind blank. Charlene broke the silence. They're scared. Maya nodded. And they should be. Janelle felt her heart racing, not from fear, but from the weight of what this meant. They weren't offering money. They were offering access, a seat at the table, or at least an invitation to stand in the doorway and look inside. What do they want me to say? She asked. Whatever you want, Maya said. But this time, they're not the ones holding the mic. Janelle folded the letter slowly. She didn't know if she was ready, but she knew this. She wasn't invisible anymore. Janelle stood in front of the Radcliffe Technologies headquarters like she was about to walk into a courtroom, not a corporate building. The structure loomed, all glass and chrome, sleek and detached from the world that had shaped her. The kind of place built for men like Trent Radcliffe, men who never had to explain themselves. She wore no blazer, no heels, just black jeans, a gray blouse, and the same sneakers from the diner. The ones that had carried her through that morning, the ones still marked with a faint scuff on the toe. She didn't dress to impress. She dressed to remember. Maya stood beside her, briefcase in one hand, phone in the other. They'll be expecting you to be angry, she said. Let them. Janelle gave a small nod, but her mind was elsewhere. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about truth. She wasn't here to scream or perform. She was here to see the machine up close, the one that had protected Trent, silenced complaints, and now, suddenly, wanted to listen. The elevator ride to the top floor was silent. On the 34th floor, they were met by an assistant in a navy blue suit who led them down a glass hallway overlooking the city skyline. The boardroom was already filled. There were 9 people seated, men and women in suits, some curious, others clearly uncomfortable. But one face stood out. Alexa Moore. She rose from her chair, tall and composed, and offered her hand. Miss Thompson, thank you for coming. Janelle shook it. I wasn't sure if this was real, she said. It is, Alexa replied. And it's long overdue. They sat. No media, no cameras, just polished wood, glass walls, and the weight of everything unspoken. We've reviewed the video, one board member began. And the public response. This has become bigger than the incident itself. People are angry, another said. At us. At our silence. They should be, Janelle said, her voice even. You were silent for a long time. The room shifted uncomfortably, but Alexa didn't flinch. That's why we invited you, she said. Because we don't want to do this behind closed doors anymore. We want to rebuild, and we need people who can tell us where the rot is. Janelle looked around the table. You want me to help you fix your image? No, Alexa said. We want you to help fix our culture. There's a difference. Janelle raised an eyebrow. Culture is what you allow. Trent was your culture. There was a pause. One man in a gray suit adjusted his tie. He brought in billions in investment. That gave him latitude. Latitude to humiliate people. Janelle asked. Latitude to drive out the voices that made him uncomfortable? Alexa cut in. We're not here to excuse him. We're here to dismantle the system that made him possible. Maya leaned forward. So what exactly are you offering? We want to create a department focused on employee equity, dignity, and culture, Alexa said. One that reports directly to the board, not to HR. And you want me to lead it? Janelle asked. We want to start by listening to you. From there, we'd like to explore a formal role. Another board member frowned. She's not even. She's not what? Alexa said sharply. Qualified? Professional enough? Because from where I'm sitting, she's more qualified than any of us to speak about what's broken here. The room fell quiet. Janelle took a breath. I'm not an executive. I've never led a department. I didn't finish college. I don't have a LinkedIn full of buzzwords. But you have something we don't, Alexa said. A perspective we've ignored for too long. And the courage to act on it. I didn't act out of courage, Janelle said. I acted out of survival. Sometimes they're the same thing, Alexa replied. The meeting continued for over an hour. They talked about employee training programs, about anonymous reporting systems, about creating a culture where entry-level voices didn't vanish the moment they spoke up. Janelle listened more than she spoke. When she did speak, she was direct, unapologetic, and rooted in lived experience. I'm not here to decorate your rebrand, she said near the end. I won't be a face on a brochure. If I'm doing this, I need more than an office and a paycheck. I need authority. I need to be able to say no, to you, to policies, to leadership, without being sidelined. Alexa nodded. You'll have it. Maya glanced at Janelle. This is rare. Don't take it lightly. I don't. The meeting adjourned. As Janelle and Maya exited the building, the assistant who had escorted them and handed her a small envelope. A token of thanks, she said. Inside was a handwritten note from Alexa. If dignity is disruptive, then we've been far too polite. Let's build something louder. That night, Janelle couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling in Charlene's apartment, Micah breathing softly beside her. Her mind raced. What if it was a trap? What if it was a way to buy her silence? What if stepping into their system meant becoming part of the very thing she'd kicked against? But underneath all the doubt, something else stirred. Not ambition, not revenge. Possibility. A crack in the wall. An open door. She wasn't sure what would happen next. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like the world was happening to her. She felt like she had a say in it. It only took one leak. The details of Janelle's private meeting with Radcliffe Technologies hit the internet like a match to dry grass. An anonymous internal source had tipped off a tech blog, and by morning, the headline was everywhere. Radcliffe to offer leadership role to waitress who assaulted CEO. The framing was deliberate, pointed. It didn't mention what Trent had said, didn't contextualize the cultural firestorm, didn't explore the invitation as a step toward accountability. No, just a single narrative. Janelle, the viral waitress, was now being offered power. And people had opinions. Within hours, social media turned volatile. So now kicking someone makes you qualified to lead a corporate initiative? This is just optics. She's being used. Typical. Sell the moment, sell your soul. This isn't justice. It's bribery dressed up as progress. It wasn't just trolls or bots. Some of the backlash came from the very communities that had first uplifted her. Activists who had rallied behind her now questioned her motives. Journalists who once praised her voice now dissected her silence. The hashtag #StandWithJanelle was soon met with a counterwave. #StayWokeNotSilent. Janelle saw it all from the quiet of Charlene's apartment, her phone buzzing nonstop, her inbox flooded with interview requests, speaking offers, panel invitations, and vitriol. She turned off the phone. Let them talk, Charlene said. You know your truth. But do I? Janelle asked. They think I took the deal, that I let them buy my voice. They didn't buy anything, didn't they? She walked to the window, watching as clouds pressed low over the city skyline. The same skyline she'd looked at from the Radcliffe boardroom. It felt distant now, almost unreal. Maya arrived an hour later, holding a copy of the blog post in her hand. I figured you'd seen it. Janelle nodded. I didn't think it'd blow up this fast. Maya sat beside her. It was inevitable. You went from symbol to negotiator. People are uncomfortable with that. They think I betrayed something. They think you're no longer controllable. Janelle looked up. So what do I do? Maya hesitated. You speak. Publicly. Not to defend yourself, but to clarify your position, your intention. If you stay silent, they'll define you. Again, the idea felt suffocating. Another statement. Another speech. Another moment under the microscope. But Janelle knew Maya was right. Still, she didn't want a press conference. She didn't want to stand at a podium under lights and answer questions designed to trap her. She needed something quieter. Realer. Malik Santos agreed to meet again. They sat in the same community center, the same fold-out table, same 2 microphones. But this time, the air was heavier. You ready? Malik asked. No, Janelle said. But I'm here. He hit record. She didn't read from notes. She didn't rehearse. She spoke from the ache in her chest, the confusion, the guilt, the anger at being pulled in all directions by people who claimed to believe in justice, but flinched when justice required nuance. I didn't ask for a job, she said. I didn't knock on their door with a resume in my hand. They came to me. She paused. I said no to silence. That doesn't mean I said yes to exploitation. I didn't sell my soul. I've been surviving off scraps my whole life, emotionally, financially, spiritually. If someone's finally offering me a seat at the table, I'm going to ask who else can come with me. She looked at Malik. And if they close the door again, I'll build my own damn table. The podcast aired that night. No sensational title. No buzzwords. Just, Janelle speaks. And people listened. The tide didn't turn all at once. The criticism didn't vanish. But slowly, the conversation shifted. More people began to ask deeper questions, not about the kick, but about the culture that had made the kick necessary. Not about whether Janelle deserved a seat at the table, but why there hadn't been one for her in the first place. Some of her harshest critics retracted their comments. Others doubled down. But Janelle didn't wait for approval this time. She accepted Radcliffe's offer, but on her terms. The announcement came quietly. A short press release stating that Janelle Thompson had agreed to serve as Director of Cultural Equity and Employee Experience, reporting directly to the board, not HR. No photo ops, no staged handshake, just a new title. And behind it, real authority. She stepped into her role 3 weeks later. The office was clean, bright, and unnervingly quiet. She didn't bring flowers or diplomas. Just a worn leather notebook, a laptop, and a sticky note taped to her desk. Make space, not noise. Her first meeting was with the lowest paid employees in the company. She sat in a conference room with cafeteria workers, janitors, junior admins, and interns. I'm not here to fix you, she told them. I'm here to listen. Because no one ever gets fired for being a bully if the bullied never get heard. They talked for 2 hours. Stories poured out, microaggressions, toxic managers, invisible ceilings. She wrote everything down, not to make a report, to build a map of pain, of pressure points, of places where real change could begin. By the end of the week, she'd met with every department. Not executives, workers. She made one rule: no manager could attend the sessions. Trust doesn't grow in the shadow of authority, she said. It needs light. Not everyone welcomed her. Some executives saw her as a PR stunt with teeth. Others worried she would expose too much. But Alexa backed her, and so did the numbers. Employee feedback began to shift. Slowly, unevenly, but undeniably. She wasn't trying to save the company. She was trying to give people inside it a language for what they'd always known but never dared say aloud. And she was learning, too. Leadership wasn't about speaking the loudest. It was about speaking last, after everyone else had been heard. By the end of her first month, Janelle had drafted a new internal initiative, the Dignity Framework, a set of policies that centered not just inclusion, but respect, voice, and accountability. It was messy, imperfect, but it was a start. She called it version 1.0, built from silence. Because sometimes, the quietest rage is the one that rebuilds. By month 3, Janelle had found a rhythm. Her office no longer felt foreign. The sterile white walls were now dotted with quotes from employees she'd spoken to. Some anonymous, some brave enough to sign their names. One stuck out above the others, written on a large piece of paper taped across her window. They never asked what we needed. They just assumed what we wanted. That had come from a maintenance worker named Calvin, who'd been with the company for 15 years and never once had to sit down with HR. He'd said it during one of her listening sessions, hands folded on the table, eyes fixed on the floor. Now it was the first thing people saw when they walked into her office. Janelle still didn't like titles, but she was starting to understand what her role meant, not just in terms of policy, but as a presence. Employees came to her with things they wouldn't say anywhere else. She wasn't just a liaison. She was a pressure valve, a witness, a translator between two worlds that had never spoken the same language. Alexa continued to support her, shielding her from some of the political crossfire. But even she admitted, during one of their check-ins, some of the boards still see you as a symbol. They're waiting to see if you'll fade. I'm not fading, Janelle said. I know, Alexa replied. That's why they're nervous. Word of her work began to spread outside the company. Malik invited her to speak at a live event hosted by Ground Level. A labor rights organization asked her to join a roundtable on workplace dignity. Then, a public university reached out, offering to sponsor a leadership series built around her story. She turned most of them down, not out of fear, but because she didn't want to become a brand. Then came the email from Harvard. It wasn't flashy, no flattery, just a subject line: "We'd like to hear your voice." They invited her to speak at the annual Leadership from the Margin Symposium, an event designed to highlight unconventional paths to influence and impact. She read the email 3 times before forwarding it to Maya, who called 5 minutes later. You have to do it, Maya said. It's not about Harvard. It's about being in the room. I'm already in a room. This is another one. And this time, it's one you get to walk into on your own terms. Janelle thought about it for a long time. She thought about the early mornings at the diner, the echo of Trent's voice, the way her leg had moved without thinking. She thought about the silence that followed and the noise that came after. She thought about all the rooms she'd never been invited into, and the ones she'd walked through anyway. In the end, she said yes. The auditorium was full. Professors, students, journalists, activists, executives, some curious, some skeptical, all waiting. Janelle stood at the podium in a dark green blouse and black pants. No notes, no teleprompter, just her voice. I never thought I'd be here, she began. And if I'm honest, I'm still not sure I belong here. A small ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. But I've come to understand something. Belonging isn't about being invited. It's about deciding to stay even when the room wasn't built for you. She talked about the kick, but not as a moment of violence. As a moment of release. I didn't kick a man, she said. I kicked a system that expected me to smile through its insults. She talked about dignity, not as a concept, but as a resource. Like time. Like money. Something that people are expected to give away for free in exchange for employment, survival, or silence. Every workplace has a culture, she said. The question is, who gets to shape it? And who gets swallowed by it? She didn't offer easy solutions. She didn't promise a better future. She simply asked the room to look around and wonder, who's missing? And why? When she finished, the applause didn't come right away. It rolled in slowly, as if people had to sit with the discomfort first. But when it came, it filled the room. After the event, students lined up to speak with her. Professors asked for copies of her speech. A well-known labor economist pulled her aside and said, "What you're building inside that company, it matters more than you know." Later that night, alone in her hotel room, Janelle sat on the edge of the bed and took a long, deep breath. She didn't cry. She didn't celebrate. She just let herself feel the quiet. It wasn't peace exactly, but it was something close. Back at Radcliffe, changes were happening. The dignity framework had been adopted across multiple departments. Employee feedback was up. Attrition was down. Managers were undergoing mandatory cultural competency training, not a box-checking exercise, but a real one, designed with input from workers, not just HR consultants. Still, resistance lingered. One executive referred to her work as PR rehab. Another complained that she was too emotional in meetings. Janelle didn't respond. She documented. She pushed. She kept showing up. Because real change wasn't built in applause. It was built in repetition. Day after day, meeting after meeting, conversation after conversation. And now, people were listening. Maybe not all of them, but enough. One afternoon, she got a call from Gracie's diner. Rita was on the line. "I've got a new waitress," she said. "Young, bright, a little nervous. Reminds me of you." Janelle smiled. "She wants to quit after her first week. Says the customers are mean, the pay is low, and nobody sees her." Janelle paused. "Put her on." A moment later, a shy voice came on the line. "Hello. This is Janelle Thompson," she said. "I used to wear that apron." There was a stunned silence. "Just remember something," Janelle continued. "Your worth isn't defined by the people who overlook you. It's defined by how you carry yourself even when they do." The girl didn't speak for a moment. Then, "Thank you." Janelle hung up and looked out the window. The city moved below her, busy, indifferent, beautiful in its chaos. She didn't know what would come next. But for the first time in a long time, she wasn't waiting for permission. She was building forward. One policy, one voice, one space at a time. Spring had come late to Chicago, but it had come. Janelle walked into the office wearing a new pair of shoes, sleek black flats, practical but sharp. Not expensive, but chosen. She'd thrown out the old diner sneakers a week ago, not out of shame, but closure. They'd done their job. They'd carried her through fire. But now, her feet needed something steadier, something meant for longer journeys. The past month had been her busiest yet. The dignity framework had expanded beyond Radcliffe Technologies, drawing attention from other corporations, even city officials. She'd been asked to consult for municipal departments and speak at labor summits. Employees she had never met stopped her in the halls to say, "Thank you for seeing us." Still, change was never linear. There were days when her ideas were ignored, when meetings dragged into politics, when she could feel the quiet resistance under every polite smile. But she kept showing up. Then came the news. It started as a whisper, a leak on an anonymous tech gossip site, then an email chain between reporters, then a press advisory. Trent Radcliffe was planning a comeback. After nearly 5 months out of the spotlight, he'd signed with a new publicist, appeared on a niche podcast to share his side of the story, and quietly launched a new consulting firm focused on crisis management and corporate integrity. The announcement was subtle, but it spread quickly. Most of the public responded with disbelief, even mockery. Jokes flooded Twitter. Memes resurfaced the infamous video. Late-night hosts rolled out punchlines about Radcliffe integrity being the oxymoron of the year. But Janelle didn't laugh. Because behind the mockery was a reality she knew too well. Men like Trent didn't disappear. They repositioned. They rebranded. And they came back smarter. 2 days later, a request arrived in her inbox. Not from Trent directly, but from his team. Ms. Thompson, Mr. Radcliffe is interested in meeting with you privately. He believes it is time for dialogue. No press. No cameras. Just a conversation. She stared at the screen, her body frozen. It felt like reading a message from a ghost that refused to stay dead. Charlene was furious. You are not meeting with that man. He's trying to manipulate the narrative again, Maya said. This is PR, nothing more. Alexa was more measured. You don't owe him anything, she said. But if you want to understand what kind of future you're building, sometimes you have to revisit the past. Janelle didn't respond for 2 days. She thought about everything she had built, her role, her influence, the slow, painful progress. She thought about the weight of being seen not just as a person, but a precedent. Every move she made now carried the expectations of others. To meet with Trent might be seen as betrayal. To refuse might be seen as cowardice. Either way, she would be judged. But judgment wasn't new to her. What was new was having the right to choose on her own terms. She accepted. They met at a quiet restaurant on the north side, away from cameras, press, and curiosity. Trent arrived first. He looked older, thinner. The jaw that had once radiated arrogance now sat softer, almost careful. His suit was expensive, but the confidence he once wore like armor had cracks in it. Janelle sat across from him without offering a handshake. He nodded once. Thank you for coming. I didn't come for you, she said. I came for clarity. He sighed, leaned back. I won't pretend I'm proud of what I said that day, he began. It was ugly. Unforgivable. You're right, she said. He paused, perhaps expecting her to soften. She didn't. I was raised in a world that made men like me believe we were untouchable, he continued. I didn't realize how deep that conditioning ran until I saw myself through other people's eyes. No, Janelle said. You realized it when your empire started to fall apart. That hit. He didn't deny it. I've spent the last few months trying to understand how I became the man who said those words. I lost everything. You lost power, Janelle corrected. That's not everything. That's the thing you were afraid to live without. He looked down at the table. I came here because I don't want to fight. I want to learn. I want to rebuild something different. Janelle studied him. Rebuilding starts with stepping aside, not stepping back in. I'm not asking for a stage, he said. I'm asking for perspective. She leaned in, voice steady. You want me to tell you it's okay. That you've changed. That you've grown. But I'm not here to validate your transformation. Then why are you here? To remind myself that forgiveness isn't the same as permission. Silence fell between them. Finally, he spoke. Do you believe people like me can change? I believe people like you change when you stop centering yourselves in other people's pain. He sat with that. They didn't speak again for several minutes. When the bill came, she paid it. Not to make a point, just because she could. Outside, the sky was clear. A breeze moved through the streets. As she walked away from the restaurant, Janelle didn't feel triumphant. She didn't feel like she had won something. What she felt was distance. A clean break. A space between the person she was and the system she had survived. That night, she wrote a note in her journal. I faced the past, not to reconcile with it, but to recognize how far I've walked away from it. She tucked it inside the notebook on her nightstand. The next morning, she went to work. There were meetings, emails, deadlines. But in the middle of it all, a young intern stopped her in the hallway. I listened to your Harvard speech, she said. It made me want to stay in this field. Janelle smiled. Then stay, she said. But make sure you don't lose yourself in the staying. As the intern walked away, Janelle looked down at her shoes. They were made for walking, and she was just getting started. A year had passed. Not a symbolic year. Not 12 chapters of transformation laid out neatly like bullet points on a resume, but a real year. One filled with noise and silence, progress and hesitation, decisions that didn't feel like victories, and victories that no one else could see. Janelle stood inside Gracie's diner for the first time in months. It looked the same faded booths, the same chalkboard menu with the letters slightly misaligned, the same smell of coffee and eggs that had once clung to her clothes long after she got home. But something had changed. This time, she was just a customer. Rita spotted her from behind the counter and grinned, wiping her hands on her apron. Well, Look who's come back to her roots. Janelle smiled. I never really left. She sat in the corner booth, the same one Trent had once occupied. The same one that had held a moment that echoed far beyond its vinyl seats. A new waitress approached. Young, nervous, with short braids tucked into a headband and a notepad clenched a little too tightly. Hi. Welcome to Gracie's, she said. What can I get you? Janelle looked up and met her eyes. Your name? Imani, the girl replied. Well, Imani, Janelle said gently. You're doing just fine. Imani smiled, a little surprised, then took the order and retreated toward the kitchen. Rita came over with a mug of fresh coffee and set it down without asking. You come here to think, she asked. Janelle nodded. To remember. To remember what? Janelle looked around. Who I was before anyone knew my name. They sat in silence for a moment, just the quiet hum of the diner, the clinking of dishes, the occasional shout from the kitchen. You still doing good work? Rita asked. I'm trying. You still got them scared up there? I've stopped trying to scare them, Janelle said. Now I'm teaching them how to listen. Rita chuckled. That's harder. I know. When Janelle finished her coffee, she left a large tip, more than the meal cost, and a small note folded underneath the saucer. It read, You're not here to serve. You're here to stand. She didn't wait to see who would find it. Outside, the city moved as it always had, indifferent, layered, full of contradictions. But something in the way Janelle walked said she no longer feared being part of it. She had made her space inside it, not through force, but through persistence. She returned to work that afternoon to find an invitation waiting on her desk. You have been nominated for the National Civil Impact Award. She stared at the email without reacting. A year ago, she might have questioned whether she deserved it. Now, she knew better. It wasn't about her deserving the award. It was about the story it carried with it. She didn't respond to the email immediately. Instead, she went into her team's shared space, an open, sunlit room lined with whiteboards and notes, coffee mugs and storyboards, the evidence of work in progress. She sat in the middle of it and opened her notebook, the one she still carried, the one she'd started the day after the kick. She flipped to a blank page and wrote, Legacy is not what you leave behind. It's what you build while you're still here, and who gets to build beside you. Over the next few days, she finalized a new initiative, a cross-sector coalition of equity leaders from tech, education, labor, and government. Not just consultants, not just figureheads, people like her, people who had lived it, fought through it, and now wanted to shape what came after. She called it the Listening Project. Its mission was simple: create spaces where power learns to listen and silence learns to speak. It started small, a meeting in a church basement, then a university classroom, then a union hall. By the end of the year, it had reached 5 cities. When people asked her how it began, she always smiled and said, not with a mission statement, not with a board, with a moment. One moment that was supposed to end me, but became the beginning. She never repeated the kick story exactly the same way. Sometimes she left parts out. Sometimes she added details. But she always ended with the same reflection. I didn't know I was starting anything. I just knew I couldn't keep swallowing it. And every time she said it, someone in the room nodded, or cried, or stayed behind after to say, I've never told anyone this, but... And in those moments, Janelle knew that what she was doing mattered more than any title, any speech, any award. One night, as she closed her laptop and turned off the lights in the office, she paused by the door. She looked around. There were no applause, no cameras, no headlines. Just empty chairs. The kind she used to wipe down between shifts. She smiled, because this was the table she'd built. Not to sit it alone, but to invite others in, to pull up more chairs, to leave the door open, and to make sure that the next time someone like Imani walked into a job, a boardroom, or a life that tried to tell her she was small, she'd remember that someone like Janelle had stood and made space, so she could stand taller.